Sarah's Stampery Tree. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some ideas for spotlight colouring on your cards, and to do that I'm going to use this set of products that comes free with Creative Stamping magazine number 129, so I'll link that below in case you're interested. You get this huge A4 stamp set with loads of cute little animals and kind of garden type things. And then you get this small die set as well, which has birthday, winter and wishes, so that you can use birthday wishes, winter wishes. You could also, if you've got a happy stamp, use a happy stamp with this as the die. And it has a couple of little leaves in the corner as well. So to start off my first card, I have got a 4" by 5¼ inch piece of white cardstock. And I'm using that because I'm going to use a 4¼ by 5½ inch card blank, and I've also cut this fine framed cover die from Altenew in orange cardstock. Now you could absolutely, if you've not got this die, use 2 rectangle dies and create your own frame, but I'm going to use this for today. So what I'm going to do is, because I want to use it as a template first, and each of the frames is reasonably delicate, so I'm going to take a couple off the outside because I want to use this inside one, just to keep the kind of strength there so that I can use it as a template without distorting it. So these I can use on something else. You can see as well that I've backed it with some double-sided adhesive sheet before I've cut it, and that will make it much easier to put the frame on the card at the end, because I'm going to use it as a template and then I'm going to actually put it on the card afterwards as well. So I'm going to centre this on my card, and then I'm going to just pencil around there, and this is going to give me a guide as to my colouring. But obviously I want to colour just very slightly outside of that line, because I'm going to eventually glue this over, and that is going to be the bit that separates my spotlight colouring from the rest of the cardstock. And don't worry if that doesn't make sense at the moment, it will make sense once we start going. So I want to stamp this bird with the leaves onto this side of the cardstock. So I'm just going to prep the stamp with some Versamark, and then I'm going to add on some blacking. I always usually use this Altenew Crisp Jet Black ink because I really like how crisply it stamps. And then I'm going to do a little bit of masking, but I only need to mask just this little bit here. So I'm just going to stamp the edge of that on here. I'm just using this as my stamp block just for a bit of ease really. So then I'm just going to cut around this, and I want to cut it on the line. Whenever you're cutting out a mask, you want to cut it quite neatly, because you want the other stamp to kind of butt right up to this one, so that you don't get like a halo effect around the image. I'm not even going to worry about this bottom bit because it's not going to hit there. I just want to add another stamp onto here, and I want it to go behind the bird as opposed to over the top of it. And then I'm going to use this wheelbarrow stamp. And actually I've changed my mind, I'm not actually going to overlap it with the bird stamp after all. So then I'm just going to stamp that one. And I really like that the tacky part of the stamp wheel holds your cardstock in place without any need for magnets or anything, so there's no magnets getting in the way. And then I want that to perch on there. And then I'm going to use my colour pencils, these Essentials and Primaries Aqua Blend pencils, to colour the image. But I'm only going to colour to just like 1 millimetre outside of that line that I've drawn on. So you can see that I'm following that line and leaving everything outside of the line in white. So now that that is coloured, I'm going to put my just to note sentiment up there. And I'm going to stamp this on. And then I'm going to take my frame, which I've taken away from the rest of the set, and then I can add that onto here. Then all that's left to do is just glue that onto an orange 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card blank. So then you can see that's our first spotlight colouring card. And it just gives it a really different look, having the colouring only in the centre and then everything else around the outside uncoloured. So for this next card, I'm going to use the mouse stamp with the leaves, and I've got 3 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch pieces of just white cardstock, and I'm going to just stamp this image in black onto each one of them. And it doesn't matter if they're not in exactly the same place on here because we're going to cut up 2 of them, but we want it to be reasonably central, just so that we can use the most of the image. And then I want to cut apart sections of 2 of them. So one, I'm going to cut a panel. So just choose whatever kind of panel you want. I'm going to cut mine 2 1/2, and then I'm also going to cut off that side, so then it'll be 2 inches, and then I'm also going to cut 1/2 inch off either end. So there's my one panel. And then for my second panel, I want to focus this panel around framing the mouse. So I'm going to cut it here and here. So that's 2 1/2 inches. So I want to make it a square. So I'll cut a little bit off this side, because this is going to be the piece that we colour. So I want them to be quite a lot of area to colour. So now we've got our 3 panels, so they will all kind of stack on top of each other. So we'll have that like that, and then we'll also have that one come over the top like that. But we're only going to colour this panel here. So I'm going to go and colour that with my alcohol markers. So then I've coloured this piece with my alcohol markers, and so I can put my card together. So I've got this main piece with the orange 5 1/2 by 4 1/4 card blank, and then each of these pieces that we cut, I've cut a piece of orange cardstock to frame those that's 1/4 of an inch bigger. So I can just glue those together. And then I want to lay these out because I want to decide where to put my sentiment. So I don't want to glue this onto here yet, because I want to make sure I've got everything in place first. And if I stamp on this and it's glued onto that and I miss stamp, then it's going to be hard to fix. So those are going to go like that. I want to use this thank you stamp, so I think what I might do is pop it up here. So then now that I know that that's stamped nicely, I can glue it onto my card blank. And then I can glue on my panels as well. And then I'm just going to finish that off with some of these little enamel dots. So there's that second card finished. So then for this next card, I've got a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of white cardstock, and I'm just going to heat emboss a pattern across that. So I'm going to use a selection of these kind of like more florally stamps from the set. And I'm actually finding it quite difficult to see where I've stamped, so I'm actually going to heat emboss this one before I move on to the next stamp. So I'm going to use my Wow Primary Ebony Superfine embossing powder. Then I'm going to go in with my next stamp. I'm starting from biggest to smallest on purpose because it's easier to fit the smaller ones in between the other items than it is to do the smaller ones and then try to fit in some bigger ones. then I'm going to use this line here to draw a line across the corner of my card. And then I'm going to flip this and put it in the exact same place, so I know that I've got the same line going either side. So I'm lining it up in the same place and drawing along the same 60-degree line, and that way I know I'm going to have parallel lines the same size on each corner. And then I'm going to use my jelly roll pens to colour this. I'm only going to colour up to these lines, so again we're doing that spotlight colouring. And even with your jelly roll pens you can still add like a couple of colours to each leaf, so we've got the darker shade at the bottom, a lighter shade at the top on these. So now I've coloured this panel, and I've also gone around the flowers on the coloured part of the panel in pale blue alcohol marker as well from Ultra, to kind of give that more variation from the black and white pieces at the side. Then I've used this layering heart set from Chloe's Creative Cards. It's this one, and you can see it's a really nice layering set because it's got this huge big heart all the way down to this tiny heart. I've used this one here just to cut a heart out of yellow cardstock. So now I'm going to make up my card. So I've got a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch cardstock. I should mention that I cut literally a 1/16 of an inch off each side of this because I've actually made this black piece of cardstock 4 by 5 1/4 inches, and so then this one is then 1/8 of an inch smaller. So I can layer those up in a minute, but for now I just want to add this. So I've cut this birthday wishes using the die set that comes with the magazine that I showed you earlier. So I'm just going to add these black words onto here. So now I've got my birthday wishes heart, and then I've cut 2 really thin strips of black cardstock. And in fact, to make sure that these thin strips were really straight, I actually used this die and just tore off 2 ends of the biggest frame. So I'm going to glue those onto these strips. So these strips I've just cut in the normal way from yellow cardstock. They're about 1/4 of an inch wide. And then I'm going to glue those onto this line that I've drawn on here. So then I'm going to cut those off, and then I'm going to layer up my card. So then I'm going to add some foam pads to the back of the heart. And I'm going to add that to the centre of my card. So then we've got this really nice striking card. So then for this next card I'm going to bring in my scrap paper because I want to stamp off the side. So I've got a 5 1/4 by 4 inch piece of white cardstock. And I want to create a little scene from some of these images. So I'm choosing 3 different size circles to cut out the 3 animals on this. And then I'll just spotlight those 3 circles to colour those in. So then I've got these pieces and I can go and colour those in. So then I've got my 3 circles which are now coloured, and I've cut 3 black circles, one size bigger than each of these. So I'll come back to them in a second. So I've decided to use the thank you again, and I'm just going to stamp that on this watering can. So then I'm going to glue these coloured circles onto the black circles. You can see that when I was die cutting it I tore that with my tape, but it doesn't matter because you're going to see so little of it, so it's covering it up. So then I can glue this onto my card front. So I've just got a black 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card blank. And then I can glue these over the top. So I'm just being careful to line up the parts of the image with these. And then by making these the parts of the image that we spotlight coloured, it also makes them the focus of the card. So for my final card, I'm going to use the boot again. And I'm going to stamp that in the middle of this 5 by 5 card. Then I'm going to use this ivy stamp to decorate around the outside. So then I'm going to cut an aperture out of the front of my card with this circle die, and then I'm going to use these two together to cut a circle frame from coloured cardstock. So then I'm going to colour this centrepiece. So now that's coloured, I'm going to glue it into here. And then I took the circle that I used to cut this out and the one the next size up to cut a frame out of black cardstock, and then I used the same one and one 2 sizes up to cut this frame from yellow cardstock. So I'm going to glue those together. And then I'm going to glue that around the aperture in my card. So then I've just got this strip of white cardstock and I'm going to use it to glue on this Winter Wishes that I've die cut using the die from the pack. And then I'm going to cut that down, and then I'm just going to use these foam strips just to pop that up. So then there's that card finished, and it kind of looks like a bit of a window into like a colourful world. So then there are all 5 of today's cards, all showing different ways of using spotlight colouring on your cards. I'd love to know your favourite. Please do let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate you clicking like below, and you can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used for today's cards are listed in the description below, and you can also find a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.